Hey guys, tonight we're doing something different. You've survived winter swimming pools and ice baths that make you feel tough. So yeah, you probably won't survive this either. But let's pretend it's 2:20 AM on April 15th, 1912, and you're plunging into the North Atlantic after the Titanic just broke in half beneath your feet. Before we dive in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm not going to chase you with a mace over it. And hey, drop your city and the time you're watching this down in the comments. I love knowing who else is awake during these quiet hours. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're treading water in the North Atlantic. The ship is gone. 2.5 hours ago, you were in a first-class cabin that cost more than most people earn in a year. Now you're bobbing in an ocean that's 20th degrees. That's -2 Celsius for everyone keeping score. Your formal dinner jacket is soaked through, clinging to your skin like wet concrete. The water doesn't feel cold at first. It feels like being stabbed, everywhere, all at once, with knives made of ice. Your body does something you can't control. You gasp, not a little gasp. A full, involuntary, lung-emptying gasp that sounds like you're being murdered. Because in a way, you are. This is called the cold shock response, and it's your body's way of saying, we're in serious trouble. Your heart rate spikes to maybe 180 beats per minute. Your blood pressure shoots through the roof. If you have any underlying heart condition, and plenty of Titanic passengers did, this is where you die. Right here. 30 seconds in. Not from hypothermia, from cardiac arrest. Here's a historical fact. Many Titanic victims didn't drown in the traditional sense. They died from cold shock in the first 3 minutes. Their hearts simply gave out from the stress of sudden immersion in water colder than a freezer. The Carpathia, the rescue ship, would arrive in less than 2 hours. Close enough to save everyone if only bodies could hold out. They couldn't. And yours won't either. You're hyperventilating now. Can't help it. Your breathing has gone from 0 to panic in 10 seconds flat. You're taking maybe 40 breaths per minute, which is great if you're running a marathon, terrible if you're trying not to drown. Each breath brings in a little water. You cough it out, breathe in more water. This is how drowning starts, not with dramatic flailing, with involuntary gasping and water in places water shouldn't be. The screaming around you is unreal. 1,500 people in the water, all of them doing exactly what you're doing, gasping, thrashing, calling for help that isn't coming. It sounds like hell with an orchestra. Some are calling for God, some are calling for their mothers. One man near you is reciting the Lord's Prayer at the top of his lungs, over and over like a broken record. The sound echoes across the flat, calm sea. Calm. The sea is perfectly calm. No waves. No wind, just cold that wants you dead. You try to swim toward a piece of debris, looks like a deck chair floating 20 feet away. Your arms feel weird, heavy. Like someone replaced your muscles with wet sandbags. This is your blood vessels constricting, pulling all the warmth away from your extremities to protect your core. Your body is making executive decisions about which parts of you it's willing to sacrifice. Fingers? Gone. Toes? Don't need them. Arms and legs. Expendable. Your brain and heart. Those were keeping warm. For now. You manage 3 strokes before you realize something terrifying. You can't feel your hands. They're there. You can see them moving through the water, but the sensation is gone. It's like wearing thick rubber gloves, except the gloves are your own frozen skin. You grab the deck chair and try to pull yourself onto it. Your fingers don't grip right. They just slide off. You try again. Slide off again. It's like trying to open a jar when your hands are covered in oil, except the oil is your nervous system shutting down. Around you, people are already going quiet. The screaming is fading. It's been maybe 5 minutes since the ship went down, and already the chorus of voices is thinning out. Not because people are being rescued, because they're dying. Fast. Faster than you thought possible. You always imagined freezing to death would be slow, gradual, peaceful even, like falling asleep in the snow. This isn't peaceful. This is violent. Your body is fighting a war it can't win, and you can feel every battle being lost. Think about your phone dying when it's cold outside. How it goes from 60% to dead in like 3 minutes. Your body's doing the same thing. Except instead of losing your ability to scroll Instagram, you're losing your ability to exist. You've been in the water for maybe 8 minutes now. You can't tell exactly because time has become meaningless. Your brain is starting to do funny things. You thought you saw your wife on a lifeboat earlier, but now you're not sure if that was real or if your oxygen-starved neurons are just making things up. The cold has a way of turning reality into a suggestion. Your core temperature has dropped from 98.6 degrees to maybe 95 degrees. Doesn't sound like much, right? 3.5 degrees. But those 3.5 degrees are the difference between I'm cold and my body is starting to shut down non-essential systems. You're shivering violently now, your jaws chattering so hard you think you might crack a tooth. This is good news. Shivering means your body is still trying to generate heat. It's burning through your energy reserves at 5 times the normal rate, turning glucose into warmth through rapid muscle contractions. Here's the problem. You're an upper-class passenger who ate a 5-course dinner 4 hours ago. Sounds like you'd have plenty of fuel, right? Wrong. Your body can only store so much immediately available energy. And shivering burns through it like a Formula 1 car burns through fuel. You've got maybe 30 more minutes of shivering before your muscles run out of gas and just stop. A woman floats past you. She's face down, not moving. You recognize her dress. She was in the first-class dining room earlier, laughing at someone's joke about the iceberg. Now she's dead. Been in the water about the same amount of time as you. Maybe she had a heart condition. Maybe she just panicked and breathed in water. Maybe her body gave up faster than yours. You don't know. What you do know is that you're looking at your future. That's you in 5 minutes. 10 if you're lucky. The lifeboats are out there. You can see them. Little dark shapes bobbing on the horizon, maybe 100 yards away. So close. But they're not coming back. They're afraid. Afraid that desperate swimmers will swamp them. Afraid that saving one person means losing 20. So they sit out there, half empty, watching 1,500 people die. Later they'll say they heard nothing, that the screaming had stopped by the time they could have come back. That's a lie. The screaming hasn't stopped. It's just quieter now, weaker, the sound of people too cold to scream properly anymore. You try to call out to them. Help! It comes out as a whisper. Your diaphragm isn't working right. The muscles that control breathing are getting sluggish, confused by the cold. You try again. Help. Better. Louder, but not loud enough. Your voice disappears into the void of the Atlantic, unheard, unanswered. Scholars debate whether more lifeboats would have mattered. Titanic had space for 978 people in lifeboats. There were over 2,200 people on board. Even with every boat full, which they weren't, more than 1,000 people were going to end up in this water. And once you're in 28 to discuss water, your survival time is measured in minutes, not hours. The lifeboats could have come back, should have come back, but would it have mattered? How many people can you pull from the water before they're too cold to save? Before they're already dead, but their hearts haven't gotten the memo yet? Your mind is wandering. You're thinking about your house in Philadelphia, the fireplace, your dog. Weird. The things your brain focuses on when you're dying. You're not thinking about wealth or achievements or legacy. You're thinking about being warm, about dry clothes, about toast and tea. Your brain is reducing your entire existence down to the most basic need, not being cold anymore. A man grabs your shoulder. He's trying to climb on top of you, literally using you as a flotation device. You push him off. He goes under, comes back up, grabs you again. You push harder this time. He's panicking, which makes sense because panic is the correct response to dying. But his panic is going to drown you both. So you shove him away with whatever strength you have left and he floats off, still thrashing, still grabbing at anything he can reach. This is what the Titanic disaster really looked like. Not the romantic scene from the movies, not the dignified acceptance of fate. Just 1,000 desperate people grabbing at anything that might keep them alive for 30 more seconds. It's not noble. It's not beautiful. It's just human. Raw. Terrified. Human. You're 12 minutes in now. the shivering is starting to slow down. Not because you're warmer, because your muscles are running out of fuel, your core temperature has dropped below 95 degrees. Welcome to mild hypothermia. You're confused. Time is weird. You can't quite remember why you're in the water. Something about a ship. An iceberg. Was there an iceberg? Your memory's getting fuzzy, like someone smeared Vaseline on your brain. This is the most dangerous part, because right now you still feel somewhat conscious. Somewhat in control. You still think you can survive this. But the truth is you're already dying. Your body's just doing it slowly enough that you don't realize it yet. Like bleeding out, but with cold instead of blood. 15 minutes in the water. You've made it to the average survival time. Congratulations. Half the people who entered the water with you are already dead. The other half will join them in the next 10 minutes. You're right on schedule. Your core temperature is hovering around 93 degrees aft now. You've crossed from mild hypothermia into moderate hypothermia, which sounds like a weather forecast, but is actually your body's way of saying, we're shutting down non-essential systems. Your shivering has stopped completely. This should worry you, but you're too confused to worry. Your brain is running on reduced power, like a laptop in battery saver mode. Here's where it gets weird. You're starting to feel warm, not cold, warm, comfortable even. Your blood vessels, which have been constricted for the past 50 minutes, suddenly dilate. Blood rushes to your skin. Your oxygen-deprived, half-frozen brain interprets this as overheating. You're burning up. You need to cool down. So you do something that will seal your fate. You take off your life jacket. This is called paradoxical undressing, and it happens in 20–50% of hypothermia deaths. People strip naked in freezing conditions because their malfunctioning brains tell them they're too hot. Later, when they find your body floating face down in the Atlantic, they'll wonder why you weren't wearing your life jacket. They'll assume you panicked and forgot to put it on. They'll never know that you took it off deliberately, calmly, because your dying brain convinced you that you were overheating. Without the life jacket, staying afloat becomes work. Hard work. You have to actively tread water. Except your legs aren't responding properly anymore. They're moving, sort of, but it's like trying to run in a dream. The signals from your brain are getting garbled on the way down. Your muscles are cold and sluggish and running on fumes. Each kick is weaker than the last. A piece of debris floats past. Looks like a door, or maybe a section of wall panelling. Something flat and wooden. You reach for it. Miss. Try again. This time you grab it. You try to pull yourself onto it, but your arms won't cooperate. They're not obeying your commands anymore. You manage to drape your upper body across it. Your legs are still in the water, but at least your chest is out. That's something. That's progress. Right? Wrong. Because now you're experiencing something called afterdrop. When you pull yourself out of the water, the blood that's been pooled in your core starts circulating again. And that blood is cold. Ice cold. It's been hanging out near your frozen skin, and now it's rushing back to your heart and brain. Your core temperature, which was slowly dropping, suddenly plummets. Some people actually die after being rescued because the act of getting out of the water triggers this cascade of cold blood returning to vital organs. You're lying on this piece of debris, shaking, which is weird because you weren't shaking a minute ago. Your body has found a tiny reserve of energy somewhere and is using it for one last desperate round of shivering. It won't last long, maybe 5 minutes, maybe less. But right now, you're shaking so hard the debris is vibrating. Your teeth are chattering, your muscles are spasming, it hurts. Everything hurts. Around you, the screaming has mostly stopped. The Atlantic is quieter now, just the gentle lap of waves against debris, the occasional cough, the sound of someone praying in German. It's almost peaceful. Almost. If you ignore the fact that you're in the middle of an open-air morgue where 1,500 people are in various stages of dying. You close your eyes for a second, just to rest, just for a moment. When you open them again, you can see stars. So many stars. The sky is perfectly clear, and the Milky Way is a bright smear across the darkness. It's beautiful, breathtaking. You've never seen stars like this. Living in Philadelphia with all the electric lights, you forgot stars could look like this. There's something poetic about dying under a sky this beautiful, something almost fitting. Your brain is shutting down, not all at once, just gradually, room by room, function by function. First, it turned off your extremities, then your shivering response, then your ability to think clearly. Now it's working on your consciousness. You're drifting, not dying yet, not quite, but getting there. Your heart rate has slowed from 180 beats per minute to maybe 40. So slow that if someone checked your pulse, they might think you were already dead. But you're not dead. Not yet. You're in that strange liminal space between alive and not alive, where your body is still technically functioning but won't be for much longer. Medical examiners later would classify your cause of death as immersion hypothermia, which sounds clinical and neat. But there's nothing neat about this. You're dying cold and confused and alone, clinging to a piece of debris in an ocean that's so dark and so cold, it feels like drowning in outer space. Think about those times your hands got so cold you couldn't unlock your phone. How frustrating that was. Now imagine your entire body is that cold, and instead of just your phone, you can't unlock life. That's where you are right now. The Carpathia is about 90 minutes away. So close. But 90 minutes might as well be 90 years when your body is shutting down this fast. You won't make it. Almost no one in the water will make it. The lifeboats might save a handful. 5 people, maybe 6, out of 1,500. Those are your odds. Those are everyone's odds. You close your eyes again. The stars blur. The cold doesn't hurt anymore. You can't feel your body, can't feel the water, can't feel anything. This is it. This is what freezing to death feels like. Not peaceful, not gentle. Just your consciousness slowly dimming like a light bulb on a failing circuit. Flicker, flicker, dark. Welcome to how 1,500 people died on April 15th, 1912. And welcome to why you wouldn't have survived either. You're 1 minute into the water now. Your heart is hammering so hard you can feel it in your throat. Each beat feels wrong. Too fast, too irregular, like your chest is trying to escape your rib cage. This is your cardiovascular system in full panic mode. Your blood pressure has spiked so high that if you had weak arteries, they'd rupture. If you had a heart condition you didn't know about, this is where you'd find out. The hard way, your breathing is chaos. You're taking 40 breaths per minute when you should be taking 12. Each gasp brings in a little seawater. You cough it out, gasp again. More water. Your throat burns, your lungs burn. Everything burns except your skin, which has gone completely numb. The nerve endings in your hands and feet have stopped sending signals. Your brain has cut them off, sacrificed them. Your fingers and toes are expendable. Your heart and brain are not. Around you, the screaming continues, but it's different now, less frantic, more exhausted. People are realizing that screaming doesn't help, that nobody is coming, that the lifeboats sitting 100 yards away are not rowing back. You can see them, little dark shapes on the horizon, close enough that if you were a strong swimmer, you might reach them. Except you're not a strong swimmer anymore. Nobody in this water is. Here's what's happening inside your body right now. Your blood vessels have constricted so tightly that blood flow to your extremities has dropped by 70%. Your hands are getting maybe a quarter of the oxygen they normally receive. Your brain is making a calculation. It's deciding which parts of you are worth keeping alive and which parts can die. Your fingers lose. Your toes lose. Your nose and ears lose. Everything that sticks out, everything exposed is being abandoned. The gasping reflex that hit you when you first entered the water is starting to ease. Not because you're warming up, because your body is adjusting to the horror of the situation. Your breathing is still rapid, still panicked, but at least you're not inhaling water with every breath anymore. This is progress, except it's not really progress. It's just your body buying time before the next stage of dying begins. A woman floats past you. She's face down, not moving. You recognize her dress. She was at dinner. She laughed at something her husband said. Now she's dead. Been in the water maybe 3 minutes. Her heart gave out. The cold shock response doesn't care about your social status. Doesn't care that you paid for a first-class ticket. doesn't care that you have children waiting for you in New York. It just kills you. Medical research would later show that 20% of cold water deaths occur in the first 3 minutes, not from hypothermia, from cardiac arrest, from the sheer physiological shock of sudden immersion. Your heart rate jumps from 70 beats per minute to over 180. Your blood pressure spikes. Your entire cardiovascular system goes into emergency mode. And if you're unlucky, if you have any weakness in your heart, any defect you didn't know about, your heart simply stops. You're starting to feel something strange, a sense of detachment, like you're watching yourself from outside your body. This is your brain conserving resources, shutting down non-essential functions. Self-awareness is a luxury. Right now, your brain needs all its energy for keeping your heart beating and your lungs breathing. Everything else can wait, or die, whichever comes first. The cold is beyond description. It's not just uncomfortable, it's violent. It feels like being pressed between 2 sheets of ice, like every inch of your skin is being stabbed with frozen needles. Except you can't feel most of your skin anymore. The nerve endings have shut down, so what you're feeling is phantom pain. Your brain knows you should be in agony, so it creates agony even when the signals aren't coming through. You try to swim toward the nearest lifeboat. You manage maybe 10 strokes before you realize something terrible. Your arms aren't working right. They're moving, but weakly, like trying to swim through honey. Your muscles are cold. The chemical reactions that make muscles contract require heat. Without heat, they slow down, way down. Each stroke is weaker than the last, each kick less effective. You stop swimming. It's too much work. Better to just float, save your energy. Except floating requires energy too, requires constant small movements to keep your head above water, and you're running out of energy fast. Your body has been burning fuel at 5 times the normal rate since you hit the water. Shivering, gasping, fighting panic. All of that requires enormous amounts of glucose, and your glucose reserves are finite. 3 minutes in the water, you're still alive, still conscious, still capable of a rational thought, but the window is closing, the next stage is coming, and the next stage is where most people die. You've been in the water for maybe 10 minutes now. Hard to tell. Time has become elastic, unreliable. What feels like an hour might be 5 minutes. What feels like 5 minutes might be 30 seconds. Your brain is starting to malfunction. Not badly, not yet. Just enough that keeping track of time is difficult. Your shivering has reached a new level of violence. Your entire body is convulsing. Your jaw is chattering so hard you've bitten your tongue. You taste blood. The shivering is your body's last desperate attempt to generate heat. Your muscles are contracting and relaxing rapidly, burning through whatever fuel reserves you have left. It hurts. Everything hurts. Your muscles ache like you've been running for hours. But here's the problem with shivering. It only works if you have fuel to burn. And you're running out of fuel. Your liver stores maybe 400 calories of immediately available energy in the form of glycogen. Under normal circumstances, that's enough to keep you going for several hours. But these aren't normal circumstances. Your metabolic rate is increased 5-fold. You're burning through those 400 calories in maybe 30 minutes, maybe less. The people around you are quieter now. The screaming has mostly stopped. Some are still calling out, but weakly. Others have gone silent. You wonder if they're dead or just conserving energy. You wonder if you should be conserving energy too, but your body won't let you. The shivering is involuntary. You can't stop it any more than you can stop your heart from beating. Your arms and legs feel wrong, heavy, clumsy, like they belong to someone else. When you try to move them, there's a delay. Like the signal from your brain is taking too long to reach your muscles. This is your peripheral nervous system shutting down. The nerves in your limbs are cold, too cold to conduct signals properly. So when your brain says move your left arm eventually moves, but slowly, weakly, ineffectively. You try to wave at a lifeboat. Your arm barely lifts out of the water. You try again. Same result. A third time. Nothing. Your shoulder muscles have given up. They're too cold, too exhausted, too depleted of oxygen and fuel. They simply won't respond anymore. This is called swimming failure, and it's how most cold water victims die. Not from hypothermia, from drowning. Because they can no longer keep themselves afloat. A man near you is struggling. He's trying to swim, but his movements are uncoordinated, desperate. He goes under, comes back up, goes under again. This time he doesn't come back up. You watch the spot where he disappeared, waiting for him to surface. He doesn't. He's gone, drowned. Not because he didn't know how to swim. He was probably a decent swimmer, but his muscles stopped working. His arms and legs stopped responding to his brain's commands, and without working limbs, you sink. Historical accounts from Titanic survivors describe this exact phenomenon. People who were strong swimmers, people who should have been able to stay afloat for hours, drowning within 15 minutes. The cold had robbed them of their strength, their coordination, their ability to keep their heads above water. The ocean didn't need to freeze them to death. It just needed to make them too weak to swim. Your core temperature is dropping. You started at 98.6 degrees. You're probably down to 95 now. 3.5 degrees doesn't sound like much. But those 3.5 degrees are the difference between functional and failing. Your heart rate has slowed. Your breathing has slowed. Your brain is starting to get less oxygen than it needs. Not enough to make you unconscious. Just enough to make you confused, sluggish, slow. You see a piece of debris. Looks like a deck chair, maybe 10 feet away. If you can reach it, you can pull yourself onto it. Get your chest out of the water. That would help. That would buy time. You start swimming toward it. Except you're not really swimming. You're flailing. Your arms are moving but not pulling you through the water. Your kicks are weak, ineffective. The debris is getting farther away. Or maybe you're drifting. Hard to tell. You give up on the debris, too much effort. Better to just float. Except floating is getting harder. Your life jacket is keeping your head above water, but barely. Each wave washes over your face. You cough, sputter, breathe in water, cough it out. This is the beginning of the end. This is how drowning starts. Not with dramatic flailing and screaming, with quiet desperation, with water slowly filling your lungs one small splash at a time. The cold has become almost background noise. You're so numb that you can barely feel it anymore. This should be comforting. It's not. Because the numbness means your nerve endings have stopped working, means your body has abandoned large portions of itself to save the core. Your hands are dead. Your feet are dead. Your face is dead. Everything that isn't absolutely essential has been sacrificed. You close your eyes for just a moment, just to rest. When you open them again, you don't know how much time has passed. Seconds? Minutes? You've lost time. That's bad. That means your brain is shutting down. Not completely, but partially. Enough that consciousness is becoming intermittent, unreliable. You're fading, and you know it. And there's nothing you can do about it. 15 minutes in the water, maybe 20. You've stopped being able to count. The shivering has slowed down, not because you're warmer, because your muscles have run out of fuel. They've exhausted their glycogen reserves. They've burned through every immediately available calorie. Now they're just stopping, giving up, conserving what little energy remains for your heart and lungs and brain. This should worry you. The stopping of the shivering is a very bad sign, but you're too confused to worry, too cold to think clearly. Your brain is running on reduced power. Non-essential functions are shutting down. Emotion is non-essential. Fear is non-essential. Worry is non-essential. All that matters is breathing, and even that is becoming difficult. Your core temperature has dropped below 95 degrees. You've crossed from mild hypothermia into moderate hypothermia. At this temperature, your body begins to fail in fundamental ways. Your heart rhythm becomes irregular. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your blood pressure drops. Your kidneys start shutting down. Your liver stops processing toxins. Every system in your body is slowing, failing, preparing for death. But the strangest thing is happening. You're starting to feel warm, not cold. Warm, comfortable even. This makes no sense. You're in 28-degree water. You should be freezing. But your blood vessels, which have been constricted for the past 20 minutes, suddenly dilate. Blood rushes to your skin. Your confused, oxygen-starved brain interprets this as overheating. You're burning up. You need to cool down. This is called paradoxical undressing, and it's one of the cruelest tricks hypothermia plays. You reach for your life jacket. Your fingers don't work right, but you manage to unbuckle it. You let it float away. There. Better. You can breathe easier now. Except you can't breathe easier, because without the life jacket, staying afloat requires active effort, and you don't have active effort anymore. Your muscles are done. You start to sink, just a little. Your head dips below the surface, you panic, kick your legs, get your head back up, cough out water, but the effort exhausted you. You sink again. Come back up, sink again. Each time it's harder to surface. Each time you inhale a little more water, your lungs are filling, slowly, one breath at a time. This is drowning, the slow kind, the kind that takes minutes instead of seconds. Around you, the Atlantic is quieter than it was an hour ago. The screaming has stopped completely. Most people are dead. Others are dying quietly, just floating, waiting. Some have their eyes open, some have their eyes closed. You can't tell who's alive and who's dead anymore. Everyone looks the same. Pale, still, silent. Your vision is blurring. The stars above you are smearing together. The lifeboats on the horizon have multiplied. Or maybe you're seeing double, or triple. Your occipital lobe, the part of your brain that processes vision, is running out of oxygen. It's creating hallucinations. False images. You see lights that aren't there. See ships that don't exist. See rescue that isn't coming. You try to call out. Try to yell for help. What comes out is a whisper. Your diaphragm isn't working right. The muscles that control breathing are cold and weak. You can barely draw breath. Each inhale is shallow, insufficient. Your blood oxygen levels are dropping. Your brain is getting less and less of what it needs to function, and without oxygen, neurons die. Quickly, permanently. Your heart rate is slow to maybe 40 beats per minute, half of what it should be. Each beat is weak, irregular. Your heart is a muscle, and like all your muscles, it's cold and failing. Soon it will fail completely. Either it will stop beating altogether, or it will start beating chaotically, ineffectively, in what's called ventricular fibrillation. Either way, you die. But you don't know you're dying. Your brain is too compromised to understand what's happening. You're just floating, drifting, fading. The cold doesn't hurt anymore. The fear is gone. You feel nothing. Just a vague sense of heaviness, of tiredness. You close your eyes just to rest, just for a moment. You don't open them again. This is how most Titanic victims died, not from freezing solid, from a combination of cold shock, swimming failure, and hypothermia, from their bodies giving up piece by piece, from their brains shutting down while their hearts still beat, from drowning in an ocean that looked calm and peaceful, but was absolutely lethal. When the Carpathia arrives 90 minutes from now, they'll find a field of floating bodies, over 1,500 of them. Most will be wearing life jackets. Most will have died within 30 minutes of entering the water. The cold killed them, fast, efficiently, without mercy. And you're one of them now. Let's step back from the horror for a moment and talk about what's actually happening inside your body when it's exposed to 28-degree water, because understanding the mechanism makes the tragedy even more brutal. Your body is an incredibly sophisticated machine designed to maintain a core temperature of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. It has multiple systems working constantly to keep that temperature stable. Shivering, sweating, blood vessel constriction and dilation. Your hypothalamus acts as a thermostat, constantly monitoring and adjusting. But these systems were designed for normal environments, cold air, hot air. Maybe brief exposure to cold water. They were not designed for sustained immersion in water that's below the freezing point of fresh water. When you enter 28-degree water, your body's temperature regulation system doesn't just fail. It gets overwhelmed, defeated, crushed. Water conducts heat away from your body 25 to 30 times faster than air at the same temperature. This is basic physics. Water is denser than air. It has a higher thermal conductivity. So when you're surrounded by near-freezing water, heat is literally being pulled out of your body at a rate your metabolism cannot possibly match. No amount of shivering can generate enough heat to compensate. You're fighting a losing battle from the first second you enter the water. Your body responds by constricting the blood vessels in your extremities. This is called vasoconstriction. The idea is to reduce blood flow to your arms, legs, hands, and feet, thereby reducing heat loss from these areas. All available warmth gets redirected to your core, your vital organs, heart, lungs, brain, liver, kidneys. These are the systems that absolutely must stay warm or you die immediately. This sounds like a good strategy. It's not. Because while vasoconstriction protects your core temporarily, it also means your extremities are now receiving almost no warm blood. Your fingers and toes start to freeze. Actually freeze. Ice crystals can form in the tissues. Your muscles stop working because the chemical reactions that make muscles contract require warmth. Below a certain temperature, these reactions slow down dramatically. Eventually they stop altogether. Here's a medical fact. When your skin temperature drops below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, your sensory nerves stop functioning properly. You lose the ability to feel pain, to feel touch, to feel temperature. This is why Titanic survivors described being numb. They weren't using metaphor. Their nerves had literally stopped transmitting signals. Their brains were receiving no information from their hands and feet because there was no information to receive. The nerves had shut down. But numbness is just the beginning. As your core temperature starts to drop, more serious problems emerge. Your heart begins to slow. Each beat becomes weaker, less efficient. Your blood pressure drops. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your brain, which requires a constant supply of oxygen and glucose to function, starts receiving less of both. Neurons begin to misfire. Confusion sets in, disorientation, memory loss, hallucinations. At a core temperature of 95 degrees, you've entered mild hypothermia. You're still conscious, still capable of some rational thought, but you're impaired, your judgment is off, your coordination is failing. You might start making poor decisions, taking off your life jacket, for instance. This seems crazy to someone whose brain is working properly, but to a hypothermic brain running on reduced oxygen and warmth, it makes perfect sense. Below 95 degrees, you're in moderate hypothermia. Shivering stops, not because you're warmer, but because your muscles have exhausted their energy reserves. You're confused, lethargic. Your speech is slurred if you can speak at all. Your pulse is weak and irregular. You're barely conscious, and you're running out of time. Below 90 degrees, severe hypothermia, your body is shutting down, your heart rate has slowed to maybe 30 or 40 beats per minute, your breathing is so shallow it's barely detectable, your blood pressure is dangerously low, you're unconscious or nearly so, your brain is receiving so little oxygen that permanent damage is occurring. Even if you're rescued at this point, even if you're warmed up, there's a significant chance you'll never fully recover. And here's the cruelest part. The part that makes the Titanic disaster even more heartbreaking. Many of the victims never reached severe hypothermia. They died in the mild to moderate stages. They died with core temperatures of 93 or 94 degrees, still technically capable of survival if rescued. But they died anyway, from cardiac arrest, from drowning, from their bodies simply giving up. The Carpathia was 90 minutes away. 90 minutes. If everyone in the water could have survived for 90 minutes, they would have been saved. But they couldn't. Because the human body, for all its sophistication, for all its remarkable ability to adapt and survive, cannot withstand 28-degree water for 90 minutes. It just can't. The physics are too brutal, the biology too fragile. Now you might be thinking, wait, didn't some people survive? Didn't a handful of Titanic passengers make it out of the water alive? Yes, a few did. Very few. And their survival doesn't disprove the lethality of cold water immersion. It just highlights how many factors have to align perfectly for someone to survive. Take Charles Joughin, the ship's chief baker. He's the most famous Titanic cold water survivor. According to his testimony, he was in the water for approximately 2 to 3 hours. 2 to 3 hours in 28-degree water. That should be impossible. Everyone else was dead within 30 minutes, so how did he survive? Several factors, all of which had to work together. First, Joughin claimed he'd been drinking whiskey heavily throughout the night. Alcohol causes vasodilation, the opposite of vasoconstriction. His blood vessels were dilated, allowing warm blood to flow to his extremities. This sounds bad. It is bad. Alcohol generally makes hypothermia worse because you lose heat faster. But in Joughin's case, it might have kept his extremities functional longer, allowing him to keep moving, keep swimming, keep his head above water. Second, he didn't enter the water until the very end. He literally rode the stern down as it sank, stepping off into the ocean without getting his head wet. This meant he avoided the initial cold shock response that killed so many others. No gasping, no hyperventilation, no cardiac arrest from the shock of immersion. He entered the water gradually enough that his body could adjust. Third, he kept moving. He didn't just float. He paddled around. He kicked his feet. He kept his muscles active, generating heat. Not enough heat to offset the cold, but enough to slow his cooling slightly. Every minute he could delay his core temperature dropping was a minute closer to rescue. Fourth, and this is pure luck, he eventually found an overturned lifeboat to cling to. He didn't get on it. The boat was too crowded. But he held onto the edge. Getting his upper body partially out of the water, this reduced his heat loss significantly. Less of his body was in contact with the killing cold. Fifth, he was rescued relatively quickly after finding the boat. He wasn't in the water for the full 2 hours alone. He spent part of that time with some form of support, and finally, he was incredibly physically fit. Bakers in 1912 did hard manual labour. Joughin was strong, well-fed, probably had decent body fat for insulation. All of these factors contributed to his survival. But here's the key. Joughin is the exception, the outlier, the 1 in 1,000 case where everything aligned perfectly. For every Charles Joughin, there were hundreds who did everything right and still died, who kept moving, who stayed calm, who avoided the cold shock response, and they died anyway. Because the water was too cold, the exposure too long, the rescue too delayed. Another exception. Rhoda Abbott. She was a second-class passenger who ended up in the water with her 2 teenage sons. All 3 were wearing life jackets. The boys died within minutes. She survived for approximately 20 to 30 minutes before being pulled into a lifeboat. She was one of only 3 women who went into the water and survived. The other 2 were pulled out within 5 minutes. Abbott lasted longer. Why? Again, multiple factors. She was relatively young, healthy. She kept her head above water, minimizing inhalation of seawater. She was near a lifeboat that eventually came back for survivors. She was incredibly lucky, but her sons, who were with her the entire time, died. Same water, same temperature, same circumstances, they died. She lived. The difference was probably just individual physiology, how their bodies responded to the cold, how quickly their core temperatures dropped, random chance. The medical literature on cold water survival is full of these exceptions, people who survive impossible situations. A Norwegian boy who fell through ice and was submerged in near-freezing water for over 2 hours, pulled out with no pulse, no breathing, core temperature of 75 degrees. He survived. Full recovery, no brain damage. How? Nobody knows for sure. Probably the mammalian dive reflex, a biological response where the body shuts down everything non-essential and focuses all resources on preserving the brain. It happens sometimes. Rarely, usually in children. It's not reliable. You can't count on it. The problem with these exception cases is that they give people false hope. They make cold water immersion seem survivable, but for every miracle survival there are thousands of deaths. The Titanic had maybe 5 or 6 people pulled from the water alive. Out of 1,500. That's a survival rate of less than 1%. Those are terrible odds. Worse than terrible. Those are almost certain death odds. And the survivors who made it, most had permanent damage, frostbite, amputations, psychological trauma. They were never the same. Their bodies had been pushed to the absolute limit of human endurance and beyond. They survived, but pieces of them died in that water. Fingers, toes, parts of their minds. You don't walk away from 28-degree water unscathed. You either die quickly, or you survive and wish parts of you had died. The Carpathia was 58 miles away when she received Titanic's distress signal. Captain Arthur Rostron immediately turned his ship around and pushed the engines to maximum speed. He did everything right. He prepared his crew. He readied medical supplies. He had lifeboats ready to deploy. He navigated through the same iceberg field that sank Titanic, in the dark, at full speed. He risked his own ship and passengers to reach the survivors as quickly as possible, and he was still too late. The Carpathia arrived at approximately 4 a.m., roughly an hour and 40 minutes after Titanic sank. By then, almost everyone in the water was dead. The lifeboats were still there, floating in a field of corpses. 705 survivors were pulled aboard the Carpathia. None of them had been in the water for more than a few minutes. The rest were gone. 1,500 bodies floating in the North Atlantic, most of them wearing life jackets, most of them frozen to death. Here's what makes this even more tragic. The lifeboats could have saved more people. Titanic's lifeboats had a combined capacity of about 178 people. When they launched, they were carrying maybe 700. They left with hundreds of empty seats, not because of malice, because of fear. The crew was afraid that if they filled the boats completely, they'd capsize. The passengers in the boats were afraid that desperate swimmers would swamp them. So the boats launched half empty and rowed away from the sinking ship. Away from the screaming, away from the people who needed help. And they sat out there in the darkness listening to 1,500 people die. Some wanted to go back, proposed it, argued for it. They were voted down, too dangerous, too risky. By the time one boat, Lifeboat 14 under 5th Officer Lowe, finally went back, an hour had passed. Almost everyone was dead. Lowe found 4 people alive, 4 out of 1,500. He searched through a field of frozen corpses for survivors and found 4. One of them died shortly after being pulled into the boat. So 3 survivors. 3 people who might have been saved if the boats had gone back immediately, but they didn't. And by the time they did, the cold had done its work. Could more have survived if rescue had come faster? Absolutely. If the Carpathia had been 30 miles away instead of 58, she could have arrived in under an hour. Most people in the water would still have been alive. If there had been a ship 10 miles away, nearly everyone could have been saved. But there wasn't. The nearest ship that responded was almost 60 miles away. And in 28-degree water, 60 miles might as well be 600. This is the brutal mathematics of cold water immersion. Survival time is measured in minutes. Rescue time is measured in hours. The gap between those two numbers is where people die. Titanic had plenty of time to evacuate if the water had been warmer. If the Atlantic had been 60 degrees instead of 28, people could have survived for hours. The Carpathia would have arrived to find swimmers, not corpses. But the water was 28 degrees, and at 28 degrees an hour and 40 minutes is an eternity. The other factor that makes this even more heartbreaking is that many of the dead were probably still alive when the Carpathia arrived. Hypothermia can mimic death. Your pulse becomes so weak it's undetectable. Your breathing so shallow it's invisible. You look dead, but you're not. Not yet. With proper treatment, rapid rewarming, aggressive medical intervention, you might survive. But the Carpathia's crew had no way to know who was dead and who was hypothermic. So they focused on the living, the people in lifeboats, the people who were obviously visibly alive. The bodies in the water were left behind. Some might have been savable. Probably not many, but some. We'll never know, because there was no time to check, no resources to try. The Carpathia's crew did everything humanly possible. They saved everyone they could, but they couldn't save the dead. And in 28-degree water, the line between dead and dying is so thin it's almost invisible. This is why the Titanic disaster is so devastating. not just because 1,500 people died, but because they died so close to rescue. They died while help was coming. They died knowing ships were on the way. They died with hope. And that makes it so much worse. Let's rewind. Before you're in the water dying of hypothermia, before the screaming stops, before 1,500 bodies are floating in the North Atlantic, there's a decision. Actually, there are hundreds of decisions, and almost all of them are wrong, not because the people making them are stupid or malicious, but because they're making decisions based on assumptions that are catastrophically incorrect. It's 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, 1912. You're a first-class passenger aboard the largest moving object ever built by human hands. You've just finished dinner. Maybe you're in the smoking room having a cigar and brandy. Maybe you're in your cabin reading. Maybe you're on deck getting some air before bed. Then you feel something, not a crash, not a violent collision, just a slight vibration, a grinding sensation that lasts maybe 10 seconds. Then it stops. You barely notice it. Some passengers don't notice it at all. Those who do think it's nothing. Maybe the ship scraped against something. Maybe the engine shifted. Whatever it was, it's over now. You go back to your brandy, your book, your conversation. You have no idea that the ship you're standing on has maybe 2.5 hours left to exist, and that you have even less time to get off it. Down in the engine rooms and boiler rooms, the story is different. Water is pouring in. Not a trickle, a flood. Through a series of narrow openings along the starboard side where the icebergs scraped the hull, the ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, is summoned. He does some quick calculations, checks which compartments are flooding, does the math, and realizes something terrible. Titanic can stay afloat with 4 compartments flooded, maybe 5 if they're lucky. 6 compartments are flooding. The ship is doomed. She will sink. Not maybe, not possibly, definitely. The only question is when. Andrews tells Captain Smith. Smith tells the officers. They begin preparing the lifeboats. But here's the problem. Nobody really believes the ship is sinking, including most of the crew, including many of the passengers, because Titanic is unsinkable. Everyone knows this. The newspapers said so. The White Star Line said so. The ship is a marvel of engineering. The largest vessel ever built. It has watertight compartments. It has the latest safety features. It cannot sink, except it is sinking. And that disconnect between what people believe and what's actually happening is about to kill 1,500 of them. The crew starts uncovering the lifeboats, starts preparing to load them, but they're not rushing, they're not panicking, because they don't really think they'll need them. This is just a precaution. Probably another ship will come alongside and take everyone off, or they'll pump out the water and limp into port. The lifeboats are just insurance. Something to make the passengers feel safe while the crew fixes whatever minor problem has occurred. Except there is no minor problem. There's a fatal problem, and every minute spent not believing it is a minute wasted. A minute that could be used to load more people into lifeboats. A minute that could save lives. But those minutes tick away while crew members reassure passengers that everything is fine, while stewards knock on cabin doors politely instead of urgently, while first-class passengers finish their drinks before bothering to head up to the boat deck, because there's no rush, there's always time, except there isn't. Here's a fact that will make you angry. Titanic had enough lifeboats for 178 people. There were over 2,200 people on board. So even if everything went perfectly, even if every lifeboat was filled to capacity, over 1,000 people were going to die. But it gets worse. Because the lifeboats didn't launch at capacity, they launched half empty. The first lifeboat to launch, Boat 7, had a capacity of 65 people. It left with 28, less than half full. Boat after boat launched with empty seats. Why? Because nobody believed the ship was actually sinking, and people didn't want to leave the warm, safe, well-lit ship for a tiny boat in the middle of a dark ocean. It seemed crazy, dangerous, unnecessary. Women were told to get into the lifeboats. Many refused. Why would they leave their husbands? Why would they climb into a little boat and be lowered 70 feet to a freezing ocean when they could stay on the warm ship? The crew couldn't force them, couldn't explain that the ship had less than an hour left, because they didn't know that themselves. So the boats launched with empty seats, with space for people who would die in the water 90 minutes later because there was no room for them. Except there was room. There was so much room. It just left without them. You're standing on the deck watching all this. Maybe you're starting to feel uneasy. The ship is listing slightly. The bow is lower than it should be. Something is wrong. But the crew is still calm. The orchestra is still playing. Surely if this was serious, there would be more urgency, more alarm. So you wait. And while you wait, the water rises. It's 12:40 a.m. The ship has been sinking for over an hour. The bow is noticeably lower now. The deck has a tilt to it. More people are starting to realise that something is genuinely wrong. The crew is working faster, loading lifeboats with more urgency, but it's too late. The mathematics of the situation have already condemned over 1,000 people to death. Titanic's lifeboats are being loaded and launched under a protocol called Women and Children First. This sounds noble, chivalrous, but in practice, it's chaotic and arbitrary. On the port side, Officer Lightoller is interpreting this as women and children only. He's turning away men even when there are empty seats in the boats. On the starboard side, Officer Murdoch is allowing men into boats if no women are nearby. Same ship, same disaster. Different interpretations, different outcomes. If you're a male passenger, your survival might depend on which side of the ship you happen to be standing on. Pure chance, random fate. The class system is also determining who lives and who dies. First-class passengers have easy access to the boat deck. They're close to the lifeboats. They know where to go. Many have been personally notified by stewards. Second-class passengers have to find their way through unfamiliar corridors and up staircases. Third-class passengers have it worst. Many are trapped behind locked gates designed to enforce immigration laws. The gates that were meant to keep them separate from the upper classes are now keeping them separate from the lifeboats, from salvation. Some stewards try to unlock gates and guide third-class passengers to the boat deck. Others don't. Some third-class passengers find their way. Most don't. And they die for it. You're a third-class passenger. You've been trying to get to the lifeboats for 30 minutes. You keep running into locked gates, dead ends, corridors that lead nowhere. You can hear the chaos above you, can hear the crew shouting, but you can't get there. You're trapped in a maze, a sinking maze. By the time you finally find a stairway that leads up, most of the lifeboats are gone. You emerge onto the boat deck and see the last boats being lowered. You run toward them. But there's no room. The crew waves you back. These boats are full, or full enough. You watch them descend into the darkness, and you understand. You're not getting off the ship. Nobody's coming back for you. This is where you die. Here's another mathematical horror. Even if every lifeboat had launched at full capacity, they still couldn't have saved everyone. The ship had lifeboat space for about 1,178 people. There were 2,224 people aboard. That means 1,046 people were going to die no matter what. No matter how efficiently the evacuation went. No matter how perfectly the crew performed. Over 1,000 people were dead the moment the iceberg scraped the hull. They just didn't know it yet. They had 2.5 hours to realize they were already dead, to say goodbye, to prepare, to accept, or to deny, to hope, to pray, to believe that somehow they'd be saved. Some people made peace with it, went to their cabins and waited for the end, put on their finest clothes, sat in chairs and read or prayed or wrote letters they knew would never be delivered. Some fought until the very last second, trying to find a way off, a piece of debris to cling to, a chance, any chance. Some helped others, and gave up their spots in lifeboats, stayed behind to assist with the evacuation, knowing they were trading their lives for strangers, choosing nobility over survival. Some panicked, begged, offered money for a spot in a boat. Tried to rush the lifeboats and were pushed back by crew members with guns. Fear makes people desperate, and desperate people make desperate choices. The crew was making impossible decisions. Who gets a seat in a lifeboat? The woman with 3 children or the woman who's pregnant? The old man or the young man? The wealthy patron who could sue the company or the poor immigrant who nobody will miss? These aren't decisions anyone should have to make. But someone had to make them, and they had seconds to decide, no time to think, no time to weigh the ethics. Just pointing, you, in the boat, you, stay here. Life, 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 death, death, death. Over and over, boat after boat. By 1:30 a.m, most of the lifeboats are gone. The ship is sinking faster now. The bow is underwater. The stern is rising. People are starting to slide down the deck, holding onto railings, climbing toward the back of the ship where it's still above water. But the stern is getting crowded. Hundreds of people packed into a space designed for maybe 50. They're climbing onto the poop deck, onto the roof of the officers' quarters, anywhere that's still dry, still safe, still above the water. For now, you're one of them. Clutching a railing, watching the water rise, watching it swallow the ship inch by inch. And you realise something. You have maybe 15 minutes left, maybe less. Then you're going into that water, and once you're in that water, you're dead. It's 2:15 a.m. The ship is dying, actually dying. The bow is completely submerged. The stern is rising at a steep angle, maybe 30 degrees, maybe more. People can't stand on the deck anymore. They're holding on to anything bolted down. Some are jumping, letting go, falling into the water. Others are climbing higher, trying to stay out of the water for as long as possible. Every second above water is another second of life, another second of hope. Even when there's no hope left, the lights are still on. This is remarkable. The engineers stayed at their posts, kept the generators running, kept the power flowing. They knew they were going to die. They knew there was no escape from the engine rooms. But they stayed anyway. So the lights would stay on, so people could see, so the wireless operators could keep sending distress signals, so there would be light until the very end. All 8 engineers died. Not one survived. They sacrificed themselves so others might have a chance, even though most of those others died too. You're still holding onto a railing on the poop deck. The stern is rising higher, 45 degrees now, maybe more. It's hard to tell. Everything is tilted, wrong. The orchestra stopped playing a few minutes ago. The musicians put down their instruments and started trying to save themselves. Some made it to collapsible boats, most didn't. You can hear the ship groaning, a deep, terrible sound. Metal tearing, rivets popping, boilers breaking free from their mountings and crashing through bulkheads. Everything inside the ship that isn't bolted down is sliding forward, crashing into the submerged bow. The noise is deafening, horrifying. The sound of a dying ship. Then something changes. The ship shudders. A massive vibration runs through the entire hull. The stern drops slightly, then rises again, higher than before, nearly vertical now. People lose their grip, start sliding down the deck, screaming, falling, hitting the water. You hold on tighter. Your hands are cramping, your arms are shaking. You can't hold on much longer, but you hold on anyway. Because the alternative is the water, and the water means death. The ship's lights flicker, once, twice. Then they go out. Everything goes dark, completely dark. The only light comes from the stars above. It's beautiful and terrible at the same time. You can barely see the water below you. Just a dark mass, waiting, hungry. The screaming is louder now. Without the lights, people can't see where they are, can't see what they're holding on to. Some lose their grip in the darkness and fall. Others jump deliberately, preferring a quick death in the water to the slow terror of waiting on a vertical ship in total darkness. You're still holding on. Your entire world has narrowed to your hands gripping the railing. That's all that exists. Just your hands, the metal, the burning in your muscles. Nothing else matters. Not the people around you, not the ship, not anything. Just holding on, just staying alive for one more second. Then one more, then one more. The ship makes a final terrible sound. A crack, a snap. Something fundamental breaking. The stern lurches, drops several feet, then rises again, even higher, completely vertical now. You can't hold on anymore. Your hands give out. You slide down the deck, tumbling, hitting things, people, Metal. You hit the water. The cold is immediate. Total. Shocking. You gasp. Inhale water. Cough it out. Try to swim away from the ship, but there are so many people in the water, thrashing, grabbing, pulling. You push them away. Kick. Struggle. Get clear. You turn around just in time to see the stern, still standing vertically, silhouetted against the stars. It hangs there for a moment, impossibly long, like it's deciding whether to sink or not. Then it slides down, smooth, quiet, almost graceful. It disappears beneath the surface, and the ship is gone. The largest moving object ever built by human hands. Gone. Vanished into the North Atlantic. It took 2 hours and 40 minutes to sink. Now it will take 15 minutes to kill most of the people left in the water, including you. You're treading water, trying to stay calm, trying not to panic. But the cold is already working. Your muscles are already weakening. Your core temperature is already dropping. And you know, somewhere in the back of your mind, that you're not going to make it. The Carpathia is coming, but she's not coming fast enough. Nobody is. It's 4:10 a.m. The Carpathia has arrived. The sun is starting to rise over the Atlantic, painting the water in shades of grey and gold. Beautiful. Obscene. The crew of the rescue ship is not prepared for what they're about to find. They expected to find swimmers, people treading water, calling for help. Instead, they find a field of bodies, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, floating face down, face up, some still wearing life jackets, some with their arms spread wide, some curled into fetal positions, some moving slightly in the current, some completely still. The crew begins pulling bodies from the water, not survivors. Bodies! They pull 7 here, 12 there, a child, an old woman, a man in a first-class uniform. The bodies are uniformly cold, uniformly stiff, uniformly dead. Most have been in the water for less than 2 hours, some for more. Temperature regulation has ceased. Their cores have cooled to fatal temperatures. Many are unconscious but not yet dead. Not quite. The line between the two is so thin it's almost invisible. Breathe they might. Hearts might beat. But there's nobody home. Nobody conscious. Nobody with enough oxygen reaching their brains to maintain life. A boat approaches a lifeboat. The people inside look like ghosts. Pale. Silent. Some are crying. Some are staring at nothing. Some are counting the empty seats, counting how many people should have been in these boats, counting how many are missing. The math doesn't work out. There should be more people. The boat should be full. Instead, they're half empty, 3/4 empty. Some carrying less than 30 people in boats designed for 65. A woman in lifeboat 14 sees the field of bodies, sees her husband among them. She tries to stand up, tries to scream. Other passengers hold her down. There's nothing they can do. He's already gone. He's been gone since roughly 2:40 a.m. when the ship sank, 50 minutes ago. Or was it longer? Time is meaningless now. All that matters is that he's not coming back. None of them are coming back. The Carpathia's crew pulls 705 people from lifeboats. They pull almost no one from the water. The water gives up very few survivors. Most people don't last long enough to be found floating. They sink, go under, stay under. Their lungs fill with seawater, their hearts stop, their brains shut down. The Atlantic accepts them, becomes their grave, becomes their monument, becomes their memorial. A man in lifeboat 1 watches the crew of the Carpathia work. He's been in this boat for hours, watched people die, watched others give up, watched some freeze silently while others scream themselves hoarse. Now he's being rescued, pulled to safety. And he realizes something terrible. He survived, when 1,500 didn't. He's alive and they're dead, for no reason. No reason at all, just chance, random luck. He happened to be close to a lifeboat. They didn't. He happened to grab a seat. They didn't. He happened to have the right height, the right weight, the right combination of factors that allowed his body to survive long enough to be found. They didn't. The Carpathia begins moving slowly among the debris field, looking for survivors, finding mostly wreckage. A deck chair floating upside down, a piece of panelling, a hat, a shoe, a doll, a book, the detritus of a ship, the evidence of a disaster. The Carpathia's doctor begins examining survivors, checking for life. Most are fine, shocked, traumatized, but physically fine. Others are showing signs of hypothermia, severe hypothermia, confusion, slurred speech, low body temperature. Most of these will recover, some won't. Hypothermia can kill you for hours after you're rescued. Your body temperature continues to drop even after you're in warm conditions. Rewarming can trigger cardiac arrest. Some people literally die from being saved. By 8:30 a.m., the last lifeboat has been rescued. The Carpathia turns to leave, turns away from the debris field, turns away from the bodies still floating in the water. There are probably another 1,000 or more out there, but the Carpathia can't save them. They're already dead. No point looking further, no point prolonging the agony. The ship sets course for New York with 705 survivors aboard, 705 people who lived, 705 people who watched the water kill everyone else. A woman sits in her cabin, wraps a blanket around herself. She's alive, she's warm, she's being fed. She should feel grateful. Instead, she feels hollow, empty. Her husband is dead. Her 2 sons are dead. She watched them disappear into the darkness. She watched them drown or hypothermic or both. She heard them call to her, heard them cry for help, and she did nothing. She couldn't do anything. She was in a lifeboat. They were in the water. The distance between them was measured in feet. It might as well have been miles. She survived and they didn't. This knowledge will eat her alive for the rest of her life. Long after the cold has faded from her memory, this guilt will remain. A man stands at the rail of the Carpathia, looks back at the debris field, disappearing over the horizon. He's a first-class passenger, wealthy, successful. He cut in line to get to a lifeboat, used his position, used his money, convinced a crew member to let him on when women and children were waiting, and he lived. He'll go back to his life, his business, his family. He'll tell them about his narrow escape, how brave he was, how quickly he acted. He'll never mention that he cut in line, that he took someone else's spot, that someone died because of his decision. That knowledge will be his secret. His shame, his sin. He'll carry it forever. A child sits in the ship's infirmary. She's 8 years old. She came aboard with her parents and siblings. Now she's alone. All of them are dead. All of them went into the water. She watched her mother's face disappear beneath the surface. Watched her father reach for her and miss. Watched her brothers sink. And she survived. A crewman grabbed her, pulled her into a lifeboat. She doesn't know why. Doesn't know why she was chosen when they weren't. Doesn't know why she gets to live and they have to be dead. This question will haunt her for decades, for the rest of her life. Why her? Why not them? The Carpathia's doctor walks through the corridors, checking on survivors. Most are doing well, physically. Mentally, there's a different story. Many are in shock, not speaking, not eating. Just staring, eyes open but seeing nothing. Their brains are protecting them, shutting down, refusing to process what they witnessed, refusing to accept the reality of what happened. In a few hours, that shock will wear off. Then comes the horror, then comes the guilt, then comes the knowledge that they lived and 1,500 didn't. That knowledge is worse than the cold ever was. Here's a fact that will make you angry. Many of the lifeboat crews didn't want to go back for survivors. They were afraid that desperate swimmers would capsize the boats, afraid that hypothermic men would drag them under, afraid that they themselves might drown. So they rowed away, stayed back, waited. By the time one boat finally went back, an hour had passed. Most of the people in the water were already dead. A handful were still alive. The crew pulled them in, but most were left behind. Most were left to die. while lifeboats with empty seats floated nearby. The numbers haunt us still. If the lifeboats had been full, if they'd gone back immediately, how many more could have been saved? The Carpathia docks in New York on April 18th. 4 days after the sinking, the survivors disembarked to chaos. Crowds, reporters, questions, morbid curiosity. People want to hear the story, want to know what happened, want details, graphic details, sensational details. The survivors are treated like celebrities, like witnesses to a grand disaster. Nobody asks them how they feel. Nobody asks about the nightmares, the guilt, the survivor's remorse. They just ask for the story, for the spectacle. Hearings are held, investigations commence. The British Board of Trade investigates. The American Senate investigates. Both conclude roughly the same thing. The ship was travelling too fast in an ice field. This was standard practice, so nobody's at fault. Nobody bears a responsibility. The engineers and officers did what they were supposed to do. The crew did what they were trained to do. The captain made reasonable decisions given the information available. Therefore, the disaster was an act of God, an accident, an unfortunate tragedy. Nobody to blame, except for the 1,500 people who are dead. The lifeboat crews are questioned about why they didn't go back. They give various answers, afraid of capsizing, thought the water was too cold, thought the swimmers had already died, thought it was too dangerous. In official statements, there's no admission of cowardice. No admission of choosing their own safety over the lives of drowning people. Just reasonable explanations, reasonable fears, reasonable decisions to prioritise the living over the dying. The first-class survivors largely recover from their trauma. They go back to their lives, their businesses, their families. They tell sanitised versions of the story. How brave everyone was, how calm the evacuation was, how quickly help arrived. Some publish books, some give speeches. They become minor celebrities, experts on the disaster. But their stories rarely include the screaming, rarely include the bodies, rarely include the smell of fear, rarely include their own complicity in the tragedy. The third-class survivors struggle. Many are immigrants. Many don't speak English well. Many don't have family waiting in America. Many don't have resources to rebuild their lives. They survived the physical disaster. Now they face the economic one. They've lost everything. Their belongings, their passage money, their chance at a new life. Some eventually rebuild. Others never do. They live out their days haunted by cold and guilt and what-ifs. The ship's officers and crew are absolved of responsibility, praised for their professionalism, lauded for their heroism. Most go back to work, some take other jobs, some retire, most don't speak about the disaster, don't write books, don't give interviews. They carry their memories silently, privately. The knowledge that they followed procedures, did everything correctly, and still 1,500 people died. This knowledge is a weight they carry forever. The victims are memorialized, statues are built, books are written, documentaries are made. Over a century later, people still talk about the Titanic, still fascinated by the tragedy, still trying to understand how such a thing could happen. The answer is simple. It happened because of cold, because of water, because of the gap between survival time and rescue time, because of decisions made in seconds that reverberated for eternity, because of human nature, because of fear, because of chance, because of 1,000 small decisions that added up to 1,000 deaths. And those 705 survivors, they lived, they survived. They carried the weight of that survival for the rest of their lives, wondering why, wondering what they did to deserve it, wondering if they would do anything differently if given the chance, wondering if their lives meant anything, wondering if the guilt of surviving would ever fade. It doesn't fade, it just becomes background noise, just something you learn to live with, just the price of survival in a world that doesn't care. This is the real legacy of the Titanic, not the technology, not the ship, but the knowledge that when cold water meets human flesh, the human loses, every time, without exception. The Titanic is a monument to human limitation, a reminder that for all our engineering, all our pride, all our certainty that we've mastered the ocean. We haven't. The ocean wins, the cold wins, death wins, and if you'd been on that ship, if you had entered that water, you would have died too. It's been weeks now. The Mackay Bennett has been recovering bodies from the Atlantic. Over 300 have been pulled from the cold water. Each one is a tragedy. Each one is someone, a husband, a wife, a child, a dream that will never be realized. The ship is crowded with corpses. They're lined up in rows, covered with sheets, waiting to be identified. Most never will be. Too damaged, too decomposed, too waterlogged to recognize. The crew does what they can. Takes measurements, writes descriptions, sends photographs back to shore, hoping that someone somewhere will recognize a ring, a watch, a piece of jewelry, some identifying mark that says this body belonged to someone specific. A coffin is lowered into the Atlantic. This is standard procedure for bodies too decomposed to preserve. The crew says words, maybe a prayer, maybe nothing at all. The body slides into the sea, returns to the ocean that killed it. There's a certain logic to it. The Atlantic took these people. The Atlantic gets to keep them. In the end, the ocean always wins. It always takes back what it has claimed. Most of the bodies never make it back to Halifax. Most never make it back to anywhere. They go down with their ship, return to the depths, become part of the wreck, become part of the eternal resting place at the bottom of the sea. The bodies that do make it back to Halifax are catalogued, photographed, described in detail. This body was well dressed, first class, probably wealthy. This body was wearing a life jacket, probably made it to the water alive. This body shows signs of violence, probably hit something on the way down, probably suffered, probably understood in those final moments that death was coming, that rescue wasn't coming, that the ocean had won. A man views the bodies. His wife is missing. He walks through the rows of corpses looking at each face, hoping not to find her, praying he won't recognize anything. Some he can identify. A woman with her distinctive ring, a child with his particular clothing. But not his wife. Never his wife. She's not here. Maybe she survived. Maybe she's on another ship heading back to civilization. Maybe she's still out there, floating in the Atlantic, waiting for someone to find her. He leaves without answers, goes back to his hotel, waits, hopes, prays. Most of the survivors are traumatized beyond measure. They have nightmares. They hear screaming in their sleep. They see faces, drowning faces, desperate faces, the faces of people who were right next to them when the water took them. One woman sits by a window every day staring at the ocean, not moving, not speaking, just watching. The doctors say she's lost her mind, trauma they call it, shell shock they call it. She doesn't respond to questions, doesn't acknowledge her family, just stares at the water and remembers everything she wishes she could forget. A first-class passenger returns to his mansion in New York. He tells people he was heroic, that he helped others, that he escaped through bravery and quick thinking. What he doesn't tell them is that he was terrified, that he cut in line, that someone else died because he survived. That knowledge eats him from the inside. He becomes a recluse, stops leaving his house, stops attending parties, stops living. Eventually he drinks himself to death. 20 years after the sinking, he's gone. The ocean didn't kill him, but the memory of the ocean did. The knowledge that he lived, and 1,500 didn't. That haunting kills him just as surely as the cold water would have. The investigations begin. The British want to know what happened. The Americans want to know who's to blame. Hearings are held. Testimonies are given. Survivors are questioned. Officers are interrogated. Everyone has a story. Everyone has an explanation. Everyone tries to justify their actions or condemn the actions of others. The investigations reveal negligence at every level. The ship was going too fast. The lifeboats were inadequate. The crew wasn't trained. The company was greedy. The captain was negligent. The nearby ships didn't respond. Everyone is guilty. Nobody is guilty. Captain Smith goes down with his ship. This is later romanticized as heroic. In truth, he was negligent. He ignored ice warnings. He maintained speed in an ice field. He made a decision that led to 1,500 deaths. But he's dead, so he can't be held accountable. He can't be tried. He can't face justice. He becomes a martyr instead, a noble captain who did his duty. The truth is more complicated. The truth always is. J. Bruce Ismay, the chairman of White Star Line, survives. This is seen as cowardice. He was a businessman, not a crew member. There was no reason for him not to survive. But survivors feel betrayed. They feel abandoned. They feel like Ismay pushed people out of the way to get into a lifeboat. He spends the rest of his life defending his actions, giving interviews, explaining what happened. But nobody cares about his explanation. He's a coward, a survivor when he should have died. That is his legacy. That is what history remembers. The Californian becomes the focus of enormous scrutiny. The ship was nearby, maybe 10 miles away, maybe 20. The exact distance is debated. The captain, Stanley Lord, claims his ship couldn't help, says they didn't see the distress signals until it was too late. The crew says they saw lights, says they heard explosions, says they tried to contact the ship with a Morse lamp. But nobody was responding. The radio was off. The wireless operator was asleep. By the time they understood what was happening, it was too late. Lord lives with this knowledge, the knowledge that he might have saved hundreds of lives if he'd just turned on his radio, if he'd just investigated those lights, if he'd just acted on the instinct that something was wrong. He becomes obsessed with clearing his name, writes articles, gives speeches, publishes books, spends decades trying to convince people that he wasn't responsible for the deaths of 1,500 people. But the shadow never leaves him. The possibility that he could have done more, the weight of what if, it follows him to his grave. The inquiries conclude that multiple failures led to the disaster. The ship was unsinkable. The captain believed this. The crew believed this. The passengers believed this. Nobody took proper precautions. Nobody prepared for the worst, because the worst was supposed to be impossible. And when the impossible happened, people didn't know how to respond. They froze. They hesitated. They made poor decisions. And those poor decisions cost them their lives. The recommendations from the inquiries are revolutionary. Ships must carry lifeboats for every passenger. Every ship must maintain a 24-hour radio watch. Every distress signal must be answered immediately. An international ice patrol is established to monitor icebergs and warn ships. New standards are set for ship construction. Watertight bulkheads must be raised. Double bottoms must be installed. Ships must be built stronger. Ships must be built safer. Ships must be built so that another Titanic can never happen again. And for a while, people believe this. They believe that regulations will protect them, that technology will save them, that human ingenuity can overcome the cruelty of nature. The changes are implemented. Ships are retrofitted. New vessels are built to higher standards. The Titanic's sister ship, the Olympic, is modified. Better lifeboats, better safety features, better communication systems. The world learns from the disaster. The world changes because of the disaster. But the real legacy of the Titanic isn't the regulations. It's not the ice patrol or the radio watches or the lifeboat requirements. The real legacy is the knowledge. The knowledge that the human body cannot survive in cold water. The knowledge that 1,500 deaths in 90 minutes is possible. The knowledge that the greatest ship ever built can sink. That the unsinkable can sink. That confidence and arrogance can kill. That technology is not invincible. That human decisions matter. That choices made in seconds can reverberate for a century. Over 100 years later, people still talk about the Titanic, still fascinated by the tragedy, still trying to understand how it happened, still trying to extract meaning from the deaths of 1,500 people, and the answer is always the same. It happened because of cold, because of water, because of the gap between survival time and rescue time, because of arrogance, because of 1,000 small decisions that added up to 1,000 deaths. The Titanic disaster is a memorial to human limitation, a reminder that we are fragile, mortal, vulnerable to the forces of nature that don't care about our achievements or our pride. It's a memorial to 1,500 people who died learning lessons that the world still hasn't fully learned. Safety regulations have changed. Ship construction has changed. Maritime law has changed. But human nature hasn't changed. We still believe we can conquer nature. We still take unnecessary risks. We still ignore warnings. We still make decisions based on confidence instead of caution. And somewhere in the cold Atlantic, the wreck sits on the bottom. 2.5 miles down, covered in rust and decay, a grave monument, attended by nobody, visited only by deep-sea explorers and automated cameras, the ship that was supposed to be unsinkable, the ship that was supposed to change everything, the ship that did change everything, but whose lessons are constantly forgotten, constantly repeated, constantly relearned by new generations who think that this time it will be different. This time we'll be safe. This time we won't sink. But the ocean doesn't care about what we think. The ocean doesn't care about our plans or our confidence. The ocean just waits. Waits for the next ship. Waits for the next disaster. Waits for the next lesson that nobody will fully learn. And if you'd been on that ship, if you'd entered that water, you would have understood this. You would have understood the ocean's indifference. You would have understood the cold's cruelty. You would have understood in those final moments that humanity's dominion over nature is an illusion. That we are passengers, transient, temporary, and the ocean is eternal. It's been over a century now. The wreck sits 2.5 miles down on the ocean floor. Robert Ballard found it in 1985. The ship that was supposed to be unsinkable, rusted, broken, a monument to human failure. The bow is twisted, the stern is mangled, the superstructure is collapsed. Fish swim through the grand staircase where first-class passengers once descended in evening gowns and formal wear. Crabs crawl across the bridge where Captain Smith made his final decisions. Corals grow on the railings where 1,500 people stood during their last moments alive. The ocean has reclaimed the ship, made it part of itself, and in doing so, made it eternal. Explorers descend to the wreck in submarines. They take photographs. They document everything. They try to understand how a ship so magnificent, so carefully designed, so thoroughly engineered, could sink so completely. The answer sits in the cold, the depth, the unforgiving nature of the Atlantic. The ship was perfect for its environment, perfect for calm seas, perfect for normal operations, perfect for everything except disaster. Disaster revealed the ship's fragility. Disaster revealed that perfection is an illusion, that confidence is dangerous, that the ocean does not care about human achievement. The victims' names are recorded, engraved on memorials in cities across the world: New York, London, Belfast, Southampton, small towns and large cities, anywhere someone died, anywhere someone lost a loved one. The Titanic memorial on the deck of the RMS Olympic commemorates the 8 musicians who died playing until the end. The Titanic memorial in Belfast marks the shipyard workers who built the ship. The memorial in Springhead Cemetery in Liverpool names the unknown victims. The memorials are beautiful, respectful, haunting, but they cannot bring back the dead, cannot undo the disaster, can only serve as reminders that this happened, that 1,500 people died, that the Atlantic is patient, that the ocean always wins. Survivors wrote books, gave interviews, testified at inquiries. Some tried to forget, some tried to share their stories, some spent their remaining years trying to convince the world that the disaster could have been prevented, that if only this had happened, if only that had been different, if only Captain Smith had slowed down, if only the lifeboats had been full, if only the Californian had responded, if only, if only, if only. But the only that matters is the only that actually happened. And what happened was that 1,500 people died in 90 minutes in water that was cold enough to kill them in under 30 minutes. The Titanic story became mythology. The band playing while the ship sank. The captain going down with the ship, women and children first, millionaires and paupers drowning together, rich and poor united in death. But mythology simplifies. Mythology makes sense of the senseless. Mythology turns tragedy into narrative. The truth is messier, more complicated, less heroic. Some wealthy people survived by cutting in line. Some poor people died by being trapped behind locked gates. Some crew members helped others. Some crew members saved themselves. The band may or may not have played until the end. The evidence is unclear. Captain Smith's final moments are unknown. No one witnessed them. He may have died heroically. He may have died in panic. He may have died by accident. We will never know. But the legend matters, because the legend keeps the story alive. The legend reminds people that this happened, that the Titanic sank, that 1,500 people died, that it should never happen again. The legend transforms the disaster into a lesson, and the lesson is simple. The ocean does not care about your ship, does not care about your pride, does not care about your confidence, does not care about you. The ocean just waits for the next ship, waits for the next disaster, waits for the next lesson that nobody will fully learn. The regulations changed. The world learned from the Titanic. Ships carry enough lifeboats for every passenger. Ships maintain 24-hour radio watches. Ships travel slower in ice fields. Ships are built stronger. Ships are built safer. Ships are inspected more thoroughly. The SOLAS regulations, the International Maritime Organization, the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea. All of it exists because of the Titanic. All of it exists to prevent another Titanic, and for decades it worked. No disaster as catastrophic as the Titanic occurred. Ships sank. People died, but not in the same numbers, not in the same way. The regulations saved lives, but the lesson goes deeper than regulations. The lesson is about human nature, about confidence, about arrogance, about assuming that tragedy happens to other people, not to us, not to our ship, not to our generation. We are smarter, we are better, we have learned. We will not make those mistakes, except we do. Constantly, generation after generation. People make decisions based on confidence. People ignore warnings. People prioritize speed over safety. People prioritize profit over precaution. People assume that they have conquered nature, that they have mastered the environment, that their technology will protect them, and then the ocean reminds them. The cold reminds them. Death reminds them that they were wrong. There have been shipwrecks since the Titanic. The Lusitania sank in 1915. The Eastern capsized in 1915. The Wilhelm Gustloff sank in 1945. The Andrea Doria sank in 1956. The Herald of Free Enterprise capsized in 1987. The Estonia sank in 1994. The Seoul sank in 2014. All of them killed hundreds or thousands. All of them had contributing factors that could have been prevented. Poor decisions, ignored warnings, prioritized profit over safety, overconfidence, human nature. The same things that led to the Titanic. Different ships, different eras, different circumstances, but the same fundamental problem. Humans believe they can overcome nature. Humans are constantly proved wrong. The Titanic sank in 1912. Over a century has passed. The ship rests at the bottom of the ocean. The survivors have long since died. Even the children who survived are now gone. The generation that witnessed the disaster firsthand is completely extinct. The disaster is now history, legend, a story told in books and movies and documentaries, a cautionary tale, a reminder. But how many people actually learn from it? How many people change their behavior because of it? How many people slow down when they should? How many people listen to warnings? How many people prioritize caution over profit? How many people actually learn? The answer is not many, because the Titanic is not real to us anymore. It's a story, a tragedy, something that happened to other people a century ago, in a different world, on a different ship. The lessons are obvious to us now. Of course you should build lifeboats for everyone. Of course you should listen to warnings. Of course you should prioritize safety. Of course you should prepare for the worst. But these lessons were not obvious to the people of 1912. These lessons were learned through 1,500 deaths, and even now, we still make the same mistakes. Still prioritize profit over safety. Still assume that tragedy happens to other people. Still believe that our technology will protect us. The real lesson of the Titanic is not that ships need more lifeboats. The real lesson is that humans have not changed. We are still arrogant, still overconfident, still dismissive of danger, still making decisions based on what we hope will happen instead of what might happen. The Titanic disaster was not an anomaly. It was not a one-time tragedy. It was a demonstration of what happens when human nature meets the ocean, and it will happen again. Not with the Titanic, but with another ship, or another disaster, or another tragedy. Because humans learn slowly, if at all, and the ocean is patient, infinitely patient. So let's return to where we started. Return to you in that cold Atlantic water. It's been 20 minutes. Your core temperature has dropped to 90 degrees. Your shivering has stopped. Your muscles have given up. Your mind is cloudy. Your vision is blurring. Your heart is beating irregularly. Your breathing is shallow. You're not really conscious anymore. Not really aware of what's happening. Your brain has shut down most of its functions. All that's left is the basic drive to survive. But even that is fading. Around you, the Atlantic is full of bodies. Thousands of people have drowned here over the centuries. Sailors, fishermen, merchants, explorers. All of them have ended up in this same cold water. All of them have experienced this same slow death. All of them have floated in the dark, called out for help that didn't come, prayed to gods who didn't answer, wondered why, wondered how, wondered if rescue was coming, wondered if they would die, and then they died. And the ocean accepted them, added them to its collection, made them part of itself. The Carpathia arrives 90 minutes after the Titanic sinks. But you're already gone. By the time they pull you from the water, there's no life left in your body. No consciousness, no awareness, no spirit. Just meat, just flesh, just a body that was once a person. They will wrap you in canvas. They will say words over you. They will commit you to the sea. They will note your description in a logbook. Clothing, height, build. Any identifying marks. Most will never be identified. Most will be buried at sea. Most will remain anonymous. Most will become statistics. This is the reality of the Titanic. Not the heroism, not the nobility, not the orchestra playing as the ship sinks. The reality is 1,500 dead people floating in the Atlantic. The reality is bodies in the water, corpses being recovered, families waiting for news that never comes. The reality is cold, dark, silent, brutal. The reality is that death in the ocean is not romantic, is not beautiful, is not noble, is just death. Just the end. Just the ocean claiming what it always claims, what it always will claim. If you'd been on the Titanic, if you'd survived the initial collision, if you'd made it to the boat deck, if you'd gotten into a lifeboat, if you'd been one of the 705 survivors, you would have carried this knowledge for the rest of your life, the knowledge that 1,500 people died, the knowledge that you lived, the knowledge that it was random, chance, luck, nothing more, the knowledge that you cut in line, or you were close to the lifeboats, or you happened to be in the right place at the right time. This guilt would stay with you. It would colour every day, every celebration, every moment of joy would be tinged with guilt. Why did I survive when they didn't? What made me special? What right do I have to continue living when they are dead? These questions have no answers. These questions have haunted survivors for over a century. But if you'd been in the water, if you'd been one of the 1,500, you would have experienced the cold. The shock, the realization that rescue wasn't coming, the slow fade into unconsciousness, the final moment before everything goes black, and then nothing. Eternal nothing. The ocean below, the stars above, and you between them. No longer breathing, no longer thinking, no longer existing, just dissolved into the Atlantic, becoming part of the wreck, part of the memorial, part of history, part of the legend. This is the Titanic. This is what it means to be in 28-degree water. This is what it means to be 1,500 people with no way to escape. This is what it means to believe you are safe when you are actually doomed. This is what it means to understand, in the final moments of your life, that you were wrong, that the ship was not unsinkable, that confidence was false, that the ocean does not care, that you will die. That 1,500 will die, that nothing will change the fact that you're drowning. So you closed your eyes, your heart slowed, your breathing stopped, your consciousness faded, and you became one of the 1,500. You became Titanic. You became history. You became a lesson that nobody fully learned. You became a name on a memorial, a body in the water, a life that ended in the cold Atlantic, a person who will never be forgotten by those who survived, a ghost who will haunt the ocean for eternity. And somewhere on the bottom of the Atlantic, the Titanic rests, rusted, broken, eternal. The largest monument to human failure ever built, the greatest ship ever constructed, the unsinkable ship that sank, and with it 1,500 dreams, 1,500 futures, 1,500 stories that will never be told, all gone. All dissolved into the cold, dark water, all lost to the Atlantic, all lost to history, all lost to time. This is the Titanic. This is what it means to say that you wouldn't have survived. You were right. You wouldn't have. So here we are at the end of the night. The Titanic has sunk. The Carpathia has sailed away. The survivors are left with their guilt. The dead are left with the ocean. And you're left here with the weight of knowing that if you'd been there, you wouldn't have made it. But that's not why we're here at the end of the night. That's not the message I want to leave with you as you drift towards sleep. The real message is this. The Titanic reminds us that we are small, insignificant. Our pride means nothing to the ocean. Our confidence means nothing to the cold. Our certainty means nothing to fate. But that's not a terrible thing. That's actually liberating. Because once you accept that you cannot control everything, once you accept that disaster can strike at any moment, once you accept that death is waiting for all of us, something changes. You become free. Free to stop worrying about things you can't control. Free to appreciate the warmth of your bed. Free to feel grateful for the breath in your lungs. Free to understand that every moment is precious because it could be your last. The people on the Titanic didn't know they were going to die. They thought they had their entire lives ahead of them. They thought there would be time for apologies, time for redemption, time for one last conversation with loved ones. But there wasn't. For 1,500 people, the last moment came suddenly, violently, in cold, dark water. And they never got to say goodbye. So I want you to think about that as you close your eyes tonight. I want you to think about the people you love, the conversations you meant to have, the words you meant to say, the time you assumed you had but might not to terrify you, not to make you anxious, just to make you grateful. Grateful for your warm bed, grateful for your safe house, grateful for the fact that you're here, that you survived whatever brought you to this moment, that you made it through another day. The Titanic is a monument to human fragility, but it's also a monument to human resilience, because even though 1,500 died, 705 survived. Even though the ship sank, the story lived. Even though the cold killed so many, the memory of their deaths warms us, reminds us, teaches us. The Titanic is not a tragedy, it's a teacher, and the lesson is that life is precious, fragile, temporary, and that makes it beautiful. So as you drift towards sleep tonight, let the Titanic fade into the background. Let the cold Atlantic become a lullaby. Let the darkness of the ocean become the darkness of your eyelids, and know that you are safe, you are warm, you are alive. And that is enough. The ship is gone, the passengers are gone, the cold is gone, and tomorrow the sun will rise again, and you will be here to see it, because you survived, because you're here, because life goes on even after disaster, even after death, even after the ocean claims what it claims. Sleep well tonight. The Titanic is resting at the bottom of the Atlantic, and so should you. Good night.